Rumble has not been banned so far, and there's still so many priority picks that both teams will want to grab. Kalista, a lot of the marksmen. It looks like the Rumble's not going to hit the table for our first pick of the day, but Kalista, I imagine, should be the grab here for Wako.
Yeah, just slam it. It's been the best pickup that we've seen for Wako so far this split, and it's just the best ADC in general. It's so very strong. It can pair so incredibly well with the very tanky engage focus supports. You can also pair it up with things like the Nico if you want to. If you can fire a Nico into the backline for the Pop Blossom, that's a great way to get an engage without the Nico having to turn into a minion and sneak through the backline. You are leaving a couple of other big priority pickups available though. The Misfortune has been high priority recently, so has the Jace, and that's the sort of pickup for Hery that's really going to lay down the gauntlet for Jang. What are you going to pick up into the? Do you think you can go toe-to-toe? As I said, the Nico has been really strong, and I love it being grabbed here.
You know, Ultra Prime, super confident in the two picks that they've already netted for themselves. Obviously, one of the few wins, in fact, the only win that they've netted so far in the first split came off of the back of that combo between Nico for RosieLove and Viego for Junhao. Doesn't look like we're going to see the Viego quite yet. There'll still be a little bit of time to decide what they want to round up this composition with, but the Mbessa locked in does give some dueling potential. More than likely it's going to be for Jung in the top lane, and the fact that there's no K'Sante on the board to match it, this should give Mbessa a really solid time to just scale through the lane and give Jung the tools to succeed in the side lane.
And the way that this Mbessa can take over the map as well, if you can land those public executions, it gives you so much extra team fighting ability. The way that you can force your opponents, force OMG to always respect where the Mbessa is, always have to keep tabs on where Jiang is, because the second you get a flank on this champion, completely takes over everything. You can see we are now going to get a little bit of focus on towards the junglers. Very surprising to not see any junglers taken in the first round. They are usually the high priority picks that we've been seeing a lot of, but because you got things like the Kalista and the Misfortune Jace left alone, those were always going to be picked up very early on.
Because of no junglers being selected in that first round, Xin Zhao and Nidalee are some of the picks that are taken off the board. A little surprised that the Nidalee is taken away from OMG, but I guess, you know, they've done their research, done their homework, don't want to take any chances of Heng getting a chance on being able to really pop off on something that can warp the game, as we've seen when Nidalee is in the hands of players like Shun, players like Tarzan, who have really just taken the game in their own right. Wukong, another jungler off the board. So now I imagine, Bloxer, like, what are your options? We obviously mentioned the Viego, but if the Viego is not available, then I guess it's Vi, potentially, if you just want to be a facilitator for your team. And look, gone too.
Vi gone as well, so you're kind of running out of facilitators like you said. It means that maybe the look is going to be more towards these damage-based junglers. Things like the Zyra and the Nocturne, the Lilia, those have all been popping up quite a lot recently. Looks like for right now, OMG, they're going to look more towards getting their support. The Rail has been one of those premier pickups and works really well alongside the Misfortune. That's a powerhouse of a lane. Can't necessarily step up as much as you would usually want to into something like the Kalista Nico, but still, if you do overstep just a little bit as that Ultra Prime bot lane, you can punish them very easily. Other junglers available, I really don't know what you want to do if you want full utility. The Jarvan is around, so is the Sejuani. That one could be the pickup right here for Ultra Prime, and I honestly would like it. That and the Mbessa and the Nico, that's a great amount of frontline CC to buy space for this Kalista to be able to do what Kalistas can do.
I'm curious if Saber goes for a melee champion as well, something like the Silas. I don't know how good it is as a blind pick, but it would give you the maximum amount of flexibility for Sejuani to look on side lanes and really make use of that permafrost stacking with the melee abilities. Doesn't look like Ultra Prime are really looking towards a melee champion though. Looks like they're gonna settle on the Taliyah instead, so a little bit of extra setup there. You know, the Vi Taliyah combo not available for the guaranteed seismic shove, but anyone that does get tagged by a Pop Blossom or a knockup from the Fate's Call, Glacial Prison from Sejuani still can connect for the Taliyah full burst.
Yeah, these front-to-back team fights for Ultra Prime are going to be incredibly strong right now. It's not to say, though, that OMG can't go toe-to-toe with the composition they've drafted for themselves. Going to grab the Ahri too, so potentially a little bit more focus on trying to get an initial pick between the Jace and the Ahri, and then turn it into a full team fight. But anytime you've got yourself a Misfortune and a Rel, that is the sort of wombo combo composition that can just work at some point. If you can land a really nice Magnet Storm engage, that is a great way to just straight up win yourself a team fight. And a lot of the time into this Misfortune, we've been seeing the Braum that can just shut it down. There's not that in this game. If you are able to space this out correctly as Starry, then you will be able to find these big engages potentially, find these big plays. That being said, I think I prefer what Ultra Prime have drafted for themselves. I think it's a little bit easier to execute, a little bit more front to back, nice and easy. And for teams that have been struggling a little bit with team play, I think that can be a very nice strategy to go for.
Yeah, and I want to zoom out even more on both of these compositions and kind of check in with how the first 5 minutes we should expect to be played out. Obviously, when you have something like Nico Kalista as a double range bot lane into, you know, any AD carry with a melee support like Rel, that's always a harder time to manage in just a straight up 2v2. Do you think we see OMG trying to force a lane swap and see if they can unlock the Rel early for a little bit of roam potential here?
I think it is definitely a potential option that you can go for. At the same time, there is also a situation in which you can just sit in this lane and hope that you can get a little bit of attention out of your jungle just to try to make this work in the individual 2v2. I think swapping away, whilst it is good for your bot lane, will really hurt in trying to get your Jace into a nice spot. You can play this Jace into Ambessa matchup quite aggressively if you want to get yourself to the point at which you're very tanky with this more tank Jace build, and swapping away from it, putting him in a risky position to potentially be dove, potentially be put massively far behind, I don't think works for the way that you want to play this game out.
Sure. And you know what? Now that you mention just trying to play for having your jungler visit you, there's no better jungler that you can probably play into a Kalista lane and gank for as Poppy. You just pop that W, immediately flash right on top of Kalista, and she can no longer hop or skip or jump away out of, you know, danger there. I think it would have to come at the cost of a flash just to try and escape the range. As we load onto the Rift, there was not necessarily action, but it definitely Ultra Prime trying to get into the noses of OMG on that topside jungle.
Yeah, trying to at least spot out where it is the Junhao's going to be starting up. Are potentially looking at something a little bit funky right here out of OMG. I do think they're just going to head down to their bottom lane, not really look for anything too much. Yeah, it looks like the lane swap is not going to happen, and I'm not that surprised by it. Exactly like you said, if you can get this Poppy into this bottom lane, that's a great way to shut down what Wako wants to do. And beyond that, if you can get Linfeng unlocked from this mid lane at some point, try to roam first. Of course, the Taliyah will be able to follow you. That's one of the best parts of playing Taliyah in the mid lane, but you can still try to get into this lane just a little bit quicker, push her in, then make the move. Then Linfeng joining up with Heng on a play around the bottom lane. That would be a great way to get a couple of kills and really allow Starry and Moham to be able to play this one out a lot easier, with a lot more breathing room than they're probably going to have in these early levels.
And you know, that would be a really cool way for Linfeng to step up in this particular game. We've seen a lot of exemplary melee play out of him with things like the Yone and the Ambessa, where he's really more playing for his own economy and his own lead, and he tries to dominate the side lanes, not necessarily roaming, but that would be a nice way to see how this player is progressing and developing more as within his first split of the LPL coming up from the OMG Academy system. But so far in the first couple minutes of the game here, Bloxer, nothing too crazy out of the ordinary, and with Heng actually pathing towards the top side of the map, we're definitely not going to see any 3-minute ganks towards this Kalista in the bot lane, and it probably won't come until after he has finished his full clear on the top side of the map.
No, same thing in the top side as well. It doesn't really look like either of these junglers are potentially looking for any ganks. More interested in just getting their full clears going and, you know, getting themselves into a good spot for the rest of the map. Individually, we've had a look at the bot lane. Mid lane, I would be surprised if we get to see any solo kills. there is a potential. Anytime that you've got this matchup, you certainly can look for that solo kill, specifically pre-level 6 for Saber. If you're able to hit a good seismic shove, you deal more than enough damage to be able to take out the Ahri, but I would be surprised to see that happen. I think potentially the more interesting lane will be the top side. This lane matchup is a little bit slow early on. You're able to just push in Jiang as Hery. It's very easy when you've got yourself that ranged advantage, but once these champions get themselves to that level 6, that's the point at which you can really begin to look for potential solo kills, and if the junglers want to path up there, that's a very easy lane to influence.
Yeah. Heng might even start looking now. There is a ward, though, in this dry bush, so that's going to give Jung a little bit of safety, unless Heng just wants to force the issue there. Already slamming right into Hery and using the steadfast presence to block any more dashes from Jung, but I'm not really sure what they were expecting there. I guess, you know, for Heng's case, this is a Hex Flash Poppy, so losing the flash early on isn't the worst thing in the world. It did look a little bizarre, though, from the setup.
Yeah, I feel like a little is underselling it. Junhao, though, gonna look potentially for a counter gank. Jiang not going to be able to slow Hery up enough. Needed to be able to get a little bit more onto him to allow Junhao to be able to get into the area. As Heng, if you get the stun off in that gank, it potentially works. I'm still not certain that you're able to get yourself a kill, but completely missing that stun means that there's no way Jiang's under any real threat, just able to sit there, allow that gank to happen. You don't lose anything. Heng loses the flash. Like I said, it's not the end of the world because you do have that Hex Flash, but still, just a little bit of an odd decision. That being said, I do at least like that we're getting to see an aggressive and proactive Poppy early on. I think this champion is at its best when you use its early ganking prowess to the absolute maximum.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't really rebuttal that at all, because if the Poppy just sits in the jungle and just full clears, you're not really getting that much out of it. This champion's going to build one tank item, call it a day, and then just say, okay, guys, either I'm kicking the jungler out of an objective fight, or I'm trying to set up a pick with a wall slam. So we're going to see if Heng can find something else on this next clear, if he wants the path towards the top side again. But Hery's already was forced to use the teleport. He's going to take the long way back, so I don't imagine there's going to be any real action that he's going to find on this top wave again by the time Heng finished his full clear. Grubs is coming up in the next 20 seconds. I'm curious if either of the supports want to start making some early moves. Definitely in Ultra Prime's ball court because they've got the push on the bot side and RosieLove can move first.
They look like they're actually going to move multiple members up and around. You can take over this mid wave right here from Saber, unlock Saber and RosieLove to go and move up to this grub fight if that's what you want to do. It's going to be followed right here from OMG, so we could well get a multi-man scrap this early on into the game.
We're going to have a full party here, Bloxer. Everybody's coming. I thought that maybe they would have left both of the 80 carries to continue collecting the farm, but early scrappy fights. Kalissa and Misfortune definitely pretty darn strong at this early stage. Steadfast Presence already used to block some of the entry here, but Heng has to deal with Saber, who's now forced to flash over the pit, as now Jung is running amok onto Moham, who's completely separated from the team. That's first blood going over to Ultra Prime, and the rest of OMG, maybe they can find a scrap for themselves here as RosieLove forced to flash backwards, but the rest of OMG, they're not really getting much out of this fight. They didn't get most of the grubs there either, just one at least for themselves, but Ultra Prime definitely playing that fight a lot cleaner than OMG did.
Yeah, despite the fact that Ultra Prime opened up that fight by Jiang missing the public execution. That's how that fight starts. It just completely goes wide, but it really doesn't matter because you end up getting so split out from everyone else as Moham. Yeah, there we go. That is the miss onto the public execution, but I love this Weaver's Wall. I think this is exactly why the fight gets so split, why it's so easy in the end for Ultra Prime to be able to pick up this win. The Weaver's Wall completely stops the damage carries of OMG from being able to step up and do what they need to, and it makes the whole rest of the fight so much easier to play out. It's always unfortunate as a support when you get completely split out from the rest of your team, and yeah, a couple things going a little bit wide.
You know, I said Ultra Prime played that a lot cleaner, and then watching the replay back, I realized how there's a lot of missed skill shots there. Yeah. So I don't feel like I was the most truthful in my assessment. There was just so much going on, and the fact that Ultra Prime walked away with more of a net win. It just seemed like I guess they played better than OMG, but even with the mistakes that Ultra Prime made, there's just not much that OMG could do, just because, as you called it out, the Weaver's Wall just preventing OMG from really capitalizing on any of the missteps here. But not to fret for the side of OMG and any OMG fans in the chat, as there's still plenty of objectives to fight for, and, you know, a couple hundred gold lead, totally not the end of the world here.
No, and the fact that Heng manages to actually get... Hang
Hery?
on.
Does he have the
He's
punt
alright.
back? Okay.
He's alright. Hery's just going to be able to survive. All good. I'm slightly worried for his continued existence on this plane for a second there. Anytime an Ambessa starts dashing like that, doing that kind of damage, it always feels a little bit risky. Oh boy. I feel like I've seen this one before.
Well, let's see. Jung doesn't have flash this time, so it might be an easier time to land the slam. And you know what? Leading with Keeper's Verdict, definitely an easier execution there on the top dive. Well played by OMG.
Makes it significantly easier to play that one out, especially when you then don't actually have to land the heroic charge. Potential here for this top lane matchup to begin really swinging, because you get a massive wave push right under this tower. Going to force that teleport out of Jiang because he has to blow it right here. And now you're going to have so much more map movement available to OMG very soon. That second teleport is going to be back up and available for Hery very, very soon. Junglers, they're going to fight over this Scuttle Crab. Who gets it? Who gets it? Oh,
unfortunately for Heng, I think he was trying to smite steal the crab, but he smited Junhao instead, so it does not give him the ability to yoink that away. I like the spirit, though, you know. Gotta get in the face of the battle pig, you know. Try to swing your hammer at them and show him who's boss.
Exactly, exactly. Now, 2 grubs to 1 means that the feat didn't go over to Ultra Prime, so that is something good for OMG as well. And they've managed to get themselves a very mild gold lead, very mild indeed, about 100 gold. These two teams are incredibly close at 10 minutes into the game. I do wonder if we're going to get to see the same level of aggression for this second set of grubs as we did for the first set. As Ultra Prime, if you're able to get all 3 of the next one, not only is that a step towards another one of the feats, it's also so good for this composition to be able to push down these towers even faster, and really to be able to stop OMG for having any of that early tower aggression too through the extra set of grubs. And indeed, right now, it seems like everybody but the ADCs is going to be in the area. I'm not sure if we're going to get to see them join, but it may be a 4v4.
Yeah, there is a lot of... Oh, hang on.
Hang on.
Wako's going to try to put the pain onto Starry. Already forcing the cleanse around. I don't think he's going to get enough damage as he already preemptively used the E earlier. Oh, that's a Glacial Prison that probably hit my fridge on the backside. I'm going to have to check after this game to make sure it's okay. But OMG, now knowing that, you know, confidently, Ultra Prime are down an engage tool, only really having to worry about public execution and a pop blossom if they want to contest for these grubs. But Heng is chunked to below 50% HP, trying to regen using the power of that red buff. Junhao just going to already go in and try to secure one of these grubs with the smite combo and the permafrost. Nicely done. And now, for Ultra Prime, if they can get one more grub, they'll at least have access to Void Mines. But so far, OMG, they can count their ultimate abilities that Ultra Prime have already used, and they feel pretty confident in being able to secure the last 2, and it goes pretty even. And Moham just using the crash down over the wall. Public execution for the engage on the Heng, but he slams him into the wall, and the damage from Hery and Heng is enough to really put Jung into the ground. And now Ultra Prime are gonna have to be careful, because here comes Linfeng looking for another engage. The flash charm hits the piggy, and here is the Magna Storm to pull him right on back. Pop Blossom is going to stop the engage though further, and suddenly OMG are realizing, wait a minute guys, we went way too deep. And here comes Ultra Prime for the counterattack, and they got 2 kills off the back of it.
Oh, Raafaa, if you thought the previous fight was a mess, then this one takes the cake. I mean, that one was a complete and utter disaster for both teams somehow, and because of that, it actually ends up being pretty even overall, 3 for 3 in terms of the grubs, kills relatively even too, and it all starts with Junhao feeling himself just a little bit too much, right? Thinks that he can go in, but you're up against a Poppy as an Ambessa. If any champion is going to be able to stop what you want to do, it is this Poppy with the Steadfast Presence, and I understand completely why it is that OMG decide they want to go in here, but they over-aggress. It's the point at which RosieLove gets this next Pop Blossom off really nice in terms of the bop back out of Saber into the Pop Blossom that gives them a ton of extra damage, and then they're able to chase forwards for another kill. And I like the way that Ultra Prime were willing to go back in onto this fight, but I feel like there were multiple opportunities for both of these teams to back out throughout that fight.
You know, if we remind ourselves that the stakes of this series are not the most existent, I think it can kind of shed light on how and why these teams are being super scrappy, as Hery might have overstepped his welcome here. Junhao just waiting patiently for the Jace to overstep and try to get that crash onto the wave. And unfortunately, as both you and I know, Bloxer, anytime a top laner is trying to crash that wave so he can get the bounce back, that's an easy target to pick up.
It really is. Great lane gank right there out of Junhao, and this is going to turn into a big push underneath the tower right here. Heng might have to move up into this top lane to at least try to stop quite so much going over. I mean, Hery does have the TP available to him. You can't grab as many tower plates as you would have really wanted, but yeah, Heng is indeed going to have to move his way up into the top lane to at least dissuade any further pushes from coming through and save the teleport. Actually, Hery is going to head towards the bottom lane. I like this little bit of a swap fight here. Get Starry and Moham up into the top lane. Nice play, and anytime you've got yourself an Eclipse on the Ambessa completed, you are such a threat at this point to a relatively healthy Jace, but especially to the squishier carries like the Ahri or the Misfortune. If you can get on top of the Misfortune during these team fights, that's a massive line to success for Ultra Prime. They're also going to move over onto this Drake right now. No real response, so this should be picked up relatively easily. They're going to get tower, though.
Yeah. OMG. Oh my goodness, Heng. Okay, it's okay, guys. It's you know, we're limit testing game one. You know, that tower was nowhere close to killing Heng. Your eyes deceived you. I promise Heng was totally fine. OMG.
Good.
Trading first brick for the second dragon of the game over to Ultra Prime. This does put a little bit of a, how should I put this politely? A little bit of a time limit on OMG if they don't want to run into Ultra Prime, then Dragon Soul, which is now potentially the next 10 minutes. And it is Cloud Soul, which a lot of these champions are really going to love having for them on the side of Ultra Prime.
On top of that, you're now also 1-for-1 in terms of the feats, and whoever gets this next big Drake objective is going to put themselves in a great spot to be able to pick themselves up that. In fact, if Ultra Prime grab the next big neutral objective, that will be that. Junhao, though, going to get jomped.
And he has no flash, no way out. The bullet time, man, guys, I think that was overkill. I think you already had him, but you know what? It's time to send a message, OMG, netting a big kill onto the jungler there. Unfortunately for them, no big, actually, I take that back. Big objective just spawned in the Rift Herald, so this is great time to not only secure this objective for themselves, but as you called out earlier, Bloxer, that should be 3 feats completed for them, and OMG will get the feats of strength awarded.
It's just so... Oh, hang on. Actually, they're not going to let this go without
they
fight.
don't want to let it go, but Moham hits the sickest Magna Storm ever. Public Execution does not really connect, but it doesn't matter because Wako's got enough damage in the back pocket to take out Moham, but now they have to deal with Heng and Starry, who are now leading the charge. Linfeng, Charm Flash right onto Wako. They slam him into the wall. Beautiful combo between the OMG mid and jungler. They turn off the Rift Herald as soon as Ultra Prime were trying to challenge them, and they showed them that was a big mistake.
Yeah, but still, it buys enough time for Junhao to be able to respawn, get back onto the map, and you are at least going to dissuade the play onto the Rift Herald. So overall, I don't think you're particularly mad about that one as Ultra Prime. Obviously, you would have liked to have picked up a couple more kills, not given over a kill onto your ADC. But in the end, I don't think it's going to be the worst set of plays right here. We'll have a look back through at what it was that ended up happening. And it's, again, a very nice Weaver's Wall that at least forces Linfeng to have to pop that Spirit Rush early on, but then in comes the public execution. Everybody jumps on into this one, and it feels so rough right here. Watch Wako. desperately trying to auto-attack enough things to be able to jump away, but unfortunately the point at which you just get charmed up gonna go down very easily, and I feel like that's gonna be the story of this one.
Yeah. You know what? Once again, I am proven wrong, thinking that OMG would have enough time to be able to contest Ultra Prime for that Rift Herald after the recall, but, you know, thankfully for them, they lost 2 members in that fight, but the sacrifice was not in vain, as Junhao has enough time to take the Rift Herald off the map while everyone was resetting and redeploying back. So,
that's
this
why you
does
take that fight.
Yeah. You know what? I'm sorry, Ultra Prime. I was not familiar with the game. I'll try to respect you for the rest of the series and from now on. But at this point, 18 minutes into the game, a couple minutes before Otacon does spawn, I want to check in on some of our kind of individuals that we're hyping up so far. Linfeng was having a little bit of a quiet game up until that last fight where he was able to really shine as... Hold that point. Weaver's Wall for an attempt.
Oh, it hits.
Uh-oh. Well, Moham, I don't think you're getting out of this one. No flash available. It should just be a couple more rocks. Good night, Moham. As we check back in, you know, Linfeng having a pretty quiet game on the Ahri, but really coming alive in that last fight. We didn't really get a chance to see any early roams, but you can already see how the clocks are working for OMG as Ultra Prime really trying to force this second turret for themselves here, but at least the tier 1 turret does not fall in the mid lane just to crash.
I feel like if anybody that we highlighted earlier on is having a particularly exciting game, it has to be RosieLove so far. Been a couple of really nice pop blossoms. The one in the top lane skirmish is what turns around that fight and allows Ultra Prime to be able to get themselves a couple of kills back and not allow the fight to be a complete success right here for OMG. Like you said, hasn't really been the levels of roaming out of lanes particularly that we were expecting, but this point where there's the first item just about going to be completed onto RosieLove, that's where you really begin to pop off as a Nico support. In the mid lane, you know, you kind of want the 2 to 3 items. You're fine with just the 1 as a support. You deal enough damage with the Pop Blossom innately that it's fine to just use it for the CC and the little bit of extra that you can do. And it's going to be really interesting to watch the pairing between RosieLove and Wako, where it is that you're going to be going towards. Do you decide to use that ulti from Wako defensively? Or do you want to use it a little bit more offensively and try to get RosieLove into the backline for that big teamfight altering Pop Blossom?
And with the Otacon spawning on the top side of the map, it puts a little bit of hesitation in both teams in wanting to actually posture for the third dragon, since completely cross map and giving either team an opportunity to just completely blitz the Otacon objective this early into the game for free is not in either team's best wishes. So that's why you're seeing both of them posture heavily for mid control, try and see if they can bully the other back into the recesses of their jungler or jungle, and hopefully that's enough time to try and blitz for one of these objectives, which OMG, even though they got pushed back, this is now their time where they're going to try to pull the Otacon and force Ultra Prime to respond.
And I mean, the response is going to come through immediate TP going to be called, but you are ADC-less for this one still. Otacon takes a long time and does a lot of damage, so you are going to be hit as Ultra Prime.
Junhao, be quite miraculous if you could get in the pit,
yeah,
but it doesn't look like he's not even going to take a chance on it. Wako signaling to the rest of OMG and confirming their suspicions that he was not with them on that play, securing the third dragon for themselves, and it puts them at Cloud Soul Point. However, Otacon is secured for OMG, and now there's a chance for a fight. RosieLove is heavily chunked. Bullet time is just going to force him to get saved by the Fate's Call. Thankfully, Wako was in range to bail out his support. That could have been not the most ideal situation for Ultra Prime on the back end there.
No, but still, very interesting decision right here out of Ultra Prime. Hey, we're perfectly happy to just move closer to getting Cloud Soul. Now, it feels a little funny to say, right? Cloud Soul, for as much as it is great, it never feels exciting. It doesn't feel as exciting as picking up Otacon, but the Otacon buff has been changed. You now give over more gold. You also have the buff for a lot less time, and so it isn't actually as strong as it was previously. It's still a good buff to get, don't get me wrong, and it allows OMG right now to play with a lot more confidence they would be able to otherwise, but I do understand the reasoning from Ultra Prime on why they decided, nah, we're fine, we're just going to pick ourselves up the Drake, but it does put a lot of pressure on them being able to pick up the next Drake and actually secure that soul.
Yep, and it will force OMG to actually respond to them instead of just giving over one last dragon over to the side of Ultra Prime. Now, for those that didn't catch it, there was a an engage made by Junhao onto Starry, and it was an immediate Captain Jack cleanse right on the dot from the Glacial Prison. So this is now Starry without cleanse, still has a flash to play around with, but no other member on his team has something like a Mikhail's Crucible to bail him out if he gets, you know, CC chains. So it's going to be very imperative for Starry to be very timely on the flash or very quick on the movement to dodge any of these skill shots. And Zhang immediately flashes away from the engage of Moham.
Yeah, I was slightly worried right there for Zhang's life, but he is able to get away just about. Losing that flash, though, is big. That's a big repositioning tool, and a lot of the threat onto Starry that would have been available to Ultra Prime in a teamfight has now disappeared. With 2 items completing, I think Ultra Prime have got themselves pretty much into the strongest position they're going to be in overall. Neither of these teams have massive late-game scaling, and to be honest, this is the point at which you really want to be using your Kalista to its greatest effect. We've got ourselves the Baron spawning in a minute and 20 seconds time, and that is going to be a big thing to try to play around. How's the setup going to look? Because I think for OMG, because they've got some more long-range poke, and they've got some very tanky champions in Moham, it's a little bit easier to check brushes, right? You've got all sorts that you can use to be able to do so. I mean, hell, even Make It Rain from Your Misfortune is available to check brushes. It makes stepping into these teamfight choke points a little bit easier for OMG than it is for Ultra Prime. They need to set up first.
Well, Ultra Prime, going to try to get the jump first onto
works.
OMG, as Heng might be in a bad spot here. He still has a flash, but he's just speeding away thanks to the power of that phase rush, and good patience from him. Doesn't cost his flash at all. And Ultra Prime, they were trying to fish for something and see if they could really net a win there, but all it is just a little bit of HP off the top of Heng.
Yeah, the fact that Heng is just going to be able to survive that. I mean, the Koenig Rücken is doing so much for him at this point. His item makes you so tanky, especially into the amount of AP damage that Ultra Prime do have available to them. As we set up right here, back and forth push happening around the Baron pit. 10 seconds until that one will spawn. I don't think anybody's going to look to rush it on spawn, but potentially right here, OMG, because they do have that fast track to the pit, because they've got the push going on in the mid lane as well, they can at least threaten onto the Baron to try to draw Ultra Prime into them in a bad situation.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that they would want to commit to the Baron unless Ultra Prime give it over to for free. It is a minute on this Cloud Soul, and Ultra Prime have to be very careful about how much they want to commit, because if they lose this fight, then they lose their opportunity for a Cloud Soul after the Baron is taken. It's already down to 5,000 or 6,000 HP. Linfeng trying to threaten with the flank, but he gets caught up by the Pop Blossom and the Public Execution. That forces the remaining cast of his Spirit Rush and his Flash. Now OMG have lost the Baron, or at least it has reset, and now Ultra Prime have an opportunity to try and pick off any stragglers here. Flash immediately out of Hery as he dodges out on that seismic shove and the Glacial Prison. OMG still alive with all 5 members, but Ultra Prime, they definitely have their turn to play the map here.
Oh, that sucks as a TP that you have to make right here from Linfeng. Just has to rejoin the rest of his team, though, otherwise the mid lane tower would have definitely gone down. Might still be chunked out. It's a bit risky to try to step up to fully finish that one off. Indeed, mid lane tower is just about going to survive, and some resets are attempted right here from Ultra Prime. But with the Drake spawning right now, I don't know if you have time. I don't know if you want to risk giving over this Drake. The Baron may take a while to pick up, but that's not the same for this final Cloud. Ooh, Junhao, a lot of damage taken.
Yeah, really good charm on the Junhao, and even though he's not in danger, he loses a lot of HP. Good slam onto the wall, and Zhang, there's the CC chain, the bullet time rips through! Good night top laner of Ultra Prime, and now with the numbers advantage, OMG might feel a little bit more confident about pushing forward. Wako is next, and without a marksman, I don't think there's any hope for Ultra Prime in the remaining parts of this fight. Saber gets caught out, there goes RosieLove, and the Cloud Soul is denied by OMG.
And that's what OMG were looking for when they started up the Baron. They draw out a couple of the key ultis, manage to just about survive, and the second that Ultra Prime step up just a little bit too far, they lose out on this Drake that they've been angling towards so heavily, and they're likely going to lose the Baron for it too. Great plays from OMG. I love the way that the flank, the long flank, was happening from Moham, so the second that first kill is picked up, the rest of the team can immediately engage onto Moham's flank, and they're able to pick themselves up 4 kills, Baron and Drake off the back of it.
It definitely felt like watching a case of dominoes there from the side of Ultra Prime. As soon as one target gets picked off, the rest of Ultra Prime are undecisive of whether they want to bail out their top laner or if they need to retreat. And the fact that they couldn't commit to either decision just makes it so easy for OMG to collapse and punish on the remaining members.
It's a great catch at the beginning of this fight. The fact that you're able to just about manage to stun up Jang against the very skinny part of that wall in the mid lane is great from Heng. And usually you'd criticize a misfortune for your ulting onto one person. That's not exactly the way you want to be using the misfortune ult in a lot of situations. It was the perfect situation right there, because the second that the Ambessa's dead, that is so much of the key frontline and backline threat that Ultra Prime have just gone, and you can then just jump the rest of their members. OMG, after what was a quiet early game, jump out to a massive gold lead for themselves, about 7,000, and now it's potentially just going to be a bit of a wallet diff in these remaining fights. Junhao didn't, I think, want to get bopped over that wall, is at least going to survive, and now we've got a two-man push going on. We've got through the mid lane and the bot lane right here for OMG, and it doesn't really feel like Ultra Prime can step up very easily at all to clear out these Baron-empowered minions.
And that threatening flank from Moham just gave me the biggest sense of dread for the Ultra Prime under that tower. As soon as Moham showed, it was almost like in the Super Bowl halftime show, Kendrick just saying, "Say Drake," and you just say, "Ultra Prime, you want to step up to that tower, bro?" You know, like I don't think you really want to defend that tower.
No, indeed. They had to just back straight out of this one. Just about going to be able to clear out some of these Baron-empowered cannon minions in the bottom lane, not lose themselves that inhibitor tower yet, but the mid lane tier 2 does fall, and this is a huge swing off of this power play. 2,400 picked up so far, and they've only just about gone through half of the Baron buff at this point. The pressure continues. Oh, good engage. I like it.
Right onto Heng, but he's super tanky, and the Keeper's Verdict is going to punt the front line away. RosieLove with the Pop Blossom, but there's no real follow-up that they can go for, and Wako gets clipped by the charm into the bullet time. Good night, Marksman, once again, and Linfeng still has the Spirit Rush, so he can safely escape over the wall. OMG get a decent amount of damage on that pod turret, but now no one's really defending the mid lane, so Linfeng and Heng turn their attention towards the mid inhibitor tower. This inhibitor should fall quickly short next, and Ultra Prime down without a marksman means that this base defense is just that much harder.
Yeah, I don't know that they're going to be able to hold on to this game for too much longer. At least not going to lose right now. Potentially a little bit of a wasted teleport jumping in from Hery. Everybody, is just going to have to wander back out and reset. Hery potentially thinking that the team was going to go for the end right here. But now it's all about trying to push through this top lane, see if you can't pick up the remaining inhibitor and pin the members of Ultra Prime into their base. That would be a great way to secure yourself at the next Drake and keep that coveted Mountain Soul out of reach, something Ultra Prime really tried to index into early.
And I really want to take this time to kind of just review what a lot of the great moves that OMG made to surmount this impeccable lead now that they have for themselves. Almost 10,000 at 30 minutes. OMG might not let me have the chance to talk about it, though, because the flash from Junhao still makes sure that he is clipped by this Magnet Storm, not able to escape from the engage. As that charm actually went through a clone. Unfortunate for Linfeng, but he still has a couple Spirit Rush casts to see if he wants to go forward even more. OMG have the numbers advantage, just need to wait on this next minion wave, but you know, depending on how well they're able to find picks on this base defense, it could be the end of the game, but Ultra Prime going to try to play it as safe as possible.
Yeah, OMG, they've got a minion wave pushing in through the bottom lane. You're down a member already as Ultra Prime. It's so tricky to try to defend your base. They're going to lose this inhibitor tower, likely the inhibitor to boot, and now it's so tricky to try to actually leave your base. Heng goes in.
There's the slam from Heng as he tries to find Saber. Immediate flash to respect the engage and at least postures himself defensively to be able to hold the line here. But all three inhibitors have now been taken here at Bloxer, and that means you're going to have double super minions pouring through the base. Bullet time was used to rip through the minion wave. RosieLove, one last Hail Mary attempt for a re-engage, but doesn't really find any kills right off the back of it. Heng is just too tanky and survives the onslaught of that counterattack. Linfeng going forward, buys some time with the stasis, tries to Spirit Rush backward. Maybe there's a chance for Ultra Prime to really capitalize, but they've got to deal with all these minion waves first.
They do, and it's gonna be just impossible to try to get out of your base for long enough to really contest onto this Drake. The soul remains just out of reach right here for Ultra Prime, and they are in prime position right now to be able to pick up this win. 12,000 gold in the lead, such a significant advantage, and cast your eyes down quickly to the kill death. No deaths on any of your main carries right here. Hery unfortunately dies twice, but all remaining deaths go down onto your rel support. You're going to be more than happy with that one as Moham. The fact that you never get a kill onto Linfeng or Starry is what has killed up in this game. If you're able to actually pick up a kill onto either of those two, huge shutdowns at this point, but it might be too little too late.
Yeah, and I have to say, I'm very, very happy with how Heng has played this opener of this series so far. I think if we take a look back down memory lane of their series against Weibo Gaming, there is a couple games where I was just, oh man, I was so distraught about some of the performances coming out of Heng, and I was ready to kind of throw in the towel and be like, this is my impression with the guy for the first split. But he has really pushed the gas forward and set up a lot of the tempo for this game, and he's already continuing the charge with Linfeng as the Magna Storm comes in for the follow-up. Bullet time is so beautiful as it just eviscerates the entire squad of Ultra Prime. 5-0 ace here, Bloxer. That's a clean ending for game 1 by OMG.
It is, and in the end, 33-minute domination right here for OMG. It felt very close for the first 10-15 minutes, but all of a sudden, this game was just cracked wide open. And to be honest, it felt like it was the decision around Atakan that really began to have things break down. I understand, as Ultra Prime, that you think this Drake is going to be very important for you. Getting the soul will be huge, but that requires you getting the soul in the end, something they were never able to do. And with a composition like they had with a Kalista, with an Ambessa, these are champions that pop off at that one, just about 2 item mark. At the point at which they were in their peak power, Ultra Prime were not proactive with it, they were not trying to force fights, and they just let everybody from OMG scale up, get where they needed to go, and at the point at which they did start initiating the fights, all of a sudden OMG, they're happy with that, they're in a good spot, and they were able to make some better map decisions that led to their victory.
Yeah, you know, funny thing about both of these teams in the first like 10-15 minutes of the game, they both had one thing in common. There is definitely a lot of nervous energy I was getting from a lot of these skirmishes and fights. You know, a lot of flash miss skill shots, you know, some ultis, you know, hitting my fridge. I have to check that during the break at some point, you know, make sure it's doing okay. But it definitely seemed like OMG was able to tighten things up and clean a lot of the coordination, and they were, most importantly, committed to what they wanted to do as a 5-man unit, whereas Ultra Prime, I think they started second-guessing themselves on which objectives to prioritize, when to step up, and when certain members were getting caught, they were confundeled about, do we bail him out, do we leave him? And then, you know, that's the tragic situation of, you know, getting killed one by one in those you know, straggler scenarios.
Yeah, and it felt bad, right? It felt bad once we got into the later stages where, like, they're trying so hard, Ultra Prime, to find which engage they can find to work. Multiple times right there in that game where you're going flying into the backline as RosieLove, trying so very hard to find that big engage, but at the point at which that was happening, your opponents are too strong, you're too weak to actually be able to find anything. I think the thing that worries me the most for Ultra Prime going forward in this series is that they've used a lot of their best pickups on this game, and they weren't able to win with it.
Not being able to win with Kalista is not a great way, and it's not necessarily on Wako for not being able to pull through, but it was a team effort where if you're not able to peel through your Kalista, especially with all these, you know, disengage and tools to slow down the fight, it just goes to show that, you know, Ultra Prime are just a little too hasty on how they were picking some of these fights past the mid game. And, you know, I have to point out, you know, for Jung, I was really excited about how he handily won the 1v1 and the way that he was handling himself early on in the Ambessa, and obviously Junhao had some good timers to cover him and really punish Hery for overstepping, but when it came to actually making use of that, you know, advantage, multiple missed public executions. If you're not hitting the misfortune in the backline, then your effectiveness on the Mbessa really falls flat here.
It really does. You can see it from the goal graph right here. From the damage graph even, wasn't able to do anywhere near as much damage as you really want to on this champion. Hery was able to do way more. Linfeng, huge damage on this Ahri, was incredibly effective. I love the way that this one was played out, and you can see it with the goal graph too. It was close for a little while, and then all of a sudden OMG, once they get themselves into a good position, completely take the reins. And that's what we were talking about in the pregame as well. This is a team that kind of needs the momentum, needs to feel good about themselves in a game, but once they do start feeling themselves, all of a sudden they just looked so nice. We got to see in that highlight right there the second time that this dive top lane worked, but you're talking about it here, you know, bad decision making. Well, that was a play that in the end it wasn't too bad for OMG, but that's because the rest of your team sort of bails you out.
This is one of the few moments in the early game where OMG overextended their welcome, and I call back to that nervous energy where you're feeling super high on the momentum after your initial pick on the ambassador. You're like, okay, let's continue pushing for more, and then as soon as they get punished, they're like, okay, you know what? Let's recalibrate where we're at. You know, let's not overchase into Talia, Unraveled Earth, and Pop Blossom as well. But you could see how quick OMG were able to dial in those, you know, adjustments by the time we got to this point in the game.
And I think after what was certainly an iffy dive, first of all, from Heng, the rest of the game, the rest of the Poppy performance, I thought was very impressive. Multiple really nice keepers' verdicts that were able to buy a lot of space for the team, get rid of some of the key carriers or the key front line before the team fight even started, and then multiple times was able to hit stuns onto very little slivers of terrain to start off team fights, and really just the champion innately itself as well, able to stop a lot of what the opponent's champions wanted to do through that steadfast presence. I think the Poppy was a great pick. Obviously we won't see it again because of Fearless, but I was very impressed by the way that Heng was actually able to play that one out. The way that this game was executed, I think, was really nice from top to bottom once we got past the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, and I think this really fits the archetype of champion that he wants to play. Someone not only that can get aggressive and really force a lot of situations, but also happens to be very durable and very tanky. Obviously, there's a lot of fighters that he excelled on, but, you know, the nice thing about Poppy is that, unlike other tanks, you can get super aggressive. You can be such a flashy playmaker, have a little bit of, you know, threatening base damage on your own, and the fact that you're so durable that you can kind of survive until the very ends of the fight gives opponents that kind of deceptive feeling like, oh, we're almost there, we can almost kill this Poppy, and then she just slips away with 10% HP.
One more shield happens and you're like, dang, we can't actually quite pick up this kill. Obviously with the Poppy off the board, it does mean that we're going to have to look towards the other sort of priority pickups in that way, and you're going to have to stop banning quite so many junglers. There are a lot of junglers taken off the board because they were picked second round. I doubt that will keep happening for us. I'd be very surprised. I think it was just because the Kalista was left available in the Nico that all of a sudden Ultra Prime were like, yes, we have to go towards this one. Now, we're going to have a look at what it is going to be for the player of the game.
You know, Stocks might say Linfeng just because he had the BM book. And, you know, not to take away from Linfeng, you know, I think we were genuinely very surprised with Heng's Poppy performance, but it was the really quiet but sudden awakening of Linfeng in the mid game. As we alluded to before, the early game, not really super proactive on, you know, early roams, and anytime that OMG were trying to play for objectives, Linfeng never really overextended himself, but once the fight started breaking even and just closer to, hey, this is a for sure winning fight, Linfeng immediately stomps on the acceleration pedal, does not waste a moment, and just starts popping off with plays, using the flash super proactively along with the Spirit Rush to lock down key targets.
And I think, to be honest, when I have an Ahri in a game, I'd rather it was this kind of slightly quieter Ahri than constantly hitting that one big flashy flash charm, but beyond that isn't really dealing the consistent damage. Whereas Linfeng in this game was constantly just hitting as much as possible, dealing so much damage, being that consistent DPS that Starry wasn't necessarily able to be, because you have to be so much more careful on this Misfortune, just mainly using the ulti. And that's not to say that there weren't some great charms being hit as well. There certainly were. A deserved MVP right here for Linfeng. It's going to be really exciting to see what he does in the next couple of games we're going to have, because the champion pool right here, I think the Ahri is one of the least interesting pickups that he has in the mid lane.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't even know he had it in him to play an Ahri like that before, you know? Obviously, the mages is something that he was working on a lot during his last year of play in the LDL before being promoted up here to Tier 1 in LPL for OMG. But yeah, for us as casters, a lot of our research really pointed him in specializing in a lot of melee champions. That's why we're really hoping that we get a Yone game, you know, or another, you know, melee. Yeah, something along those lines, right? You know, hopefully if he runs back the set, it's a lot more rewarding than the one that was shown against JDG. But that's going to do it for us, at least until we get to game 2. When we come back from the break, we'll have that draft on your screen ready.